Welcome to Shooting Spaces. I should say Shooting Spaces 2.0. I'm here with Rich Baum. What's going on, Rich? This is pretty exciting stuff.
This is exciting because it's new for us after three or four. How long have you been doing this? 4 years?
5 years.
But
5 years.
It's a new format, and it's really exciting. And we think we did a little thing between Brian and I and last year and discussed how we can bring this into the 21st.2 session of our lives, the 21st century, and make this more interesting, yet more relevant and pertinent. And I think that what we're doing is going to be great. And as always, we love your feedback. You know, maybe wait till the end of the show and see how you like it, but let us know what you thought of what we did tonight.
Awesome. But let's get right into it. We don't need any of that useless banter that we spent 5 years doing. We'll get right into it and introduce our two guests for today. The first one, both guests have been on our show previously. The first one is out of Virginia. He's a copyright attorney, David Deal. I know I've worked with you on a bunch of cases before. So David, what's going on? I don't know if you want to say a quick 10 seconds about you and where you're from and anything about you.
My office is in Charlottesville, Virginia. I was a freelance photographer for 20 years before I changed careers. My practice is dedicated to photographers with infringement matters.
Awesome. And our second guest, who many people probably know from the industry and has been on the show before, Kerry Bern out of Iowa. You're a real estate photographer as well, and a big proponent of registering your images and protecting your copyrights. So you want to say something quickly, Kerry?
Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well.
Man of many words. Anyway, so before we get into the nitty gritty, as always, we have our three sponsors back with us this year, and before we get into the conversation, we'll take a quick moment to have a quick word from our first sponsor. HD Photo Hub is the complete solution for any photography business that needs a professional white label platform that automates payment collection, scheduling, and photo delivery, all without monthly contracts or fees. HD Photo Hub is all about your business and your brand. They don't put their logo on any of your order forms or sites, and they even integrate with the email services and automation tools you are already using today. Hey, they even have live customer support to help you get started. Visit hdphotohub.com and sign up for a free one-on-one demo or live webinar to learn more. All right, so we are back, and let's start off this conversation. And the one thing I wanted to start off with, which has been a trending topic in our industry for, I would say, probably the last year and a half. It kind of died out a little bit, I noticed, as of late. But this is a question more directed towards you, David, and obviously, Kerry, if you have anything to add. It's the new trend of people trying to get usage rights with hashtag usage, if everyone knows what I'm talking. So to go a little further into it, it's when you go in and you say, can we post your image on our own site? Can we use your image? Use this hashtag to give us full permission. Here are our terms. And I'm under the impression that doesn't hold up for anything and it's complete nonsense, but tons of people are falling for it, and I see it going all over the place. So David, I know you know what I'm talking about because it's everywhere. What are your thoughts on this to begin with?
Well, I mean, it happens. You're absolutely right that I have my practice has a lot of experience with it. It doesn't happen in every case, but I would say a version of what you just described is a part of probably a quarter of the cases that I have, especially just because the real estate industry deals with so many images. They're more in the cases that I have dealing with the real estate and architectural photographers. And what the fact pattern usually means is an entity that is interested in using an image that they have sourced or they have identified online, typically on social media. Instagram is more popular than any other. They identify the image, and rather than doing the hard work of finding contact information for the photographer or the photographer's agent or something, they send what is typically an automated ask to the Instagram account through the Instagram Messenger, somewhere along the lines of, we'd love to use this photograph, we'll give you credit, blah, blah, blah. Here's a link to reply, or here's a link to approve, some version of that. And so I suppose I've never had a fact pattern in my case, in any of my cases, where a client of mine has responded. But I suppose if they did, the entity that is making the request would and could use that as some kind of grant of permission. But in my opinion, the real purpose of entities doing that is to cover themselves. It's not really, I think they're pleasantly surprised if people respond, if the person or the entity they're asking responds, they're in a better position. But I think the real purpose is when and if the what hits the fan, they at least have this 2-second or 5-second effort on their behalf, automated or otherwise, where they can claim, well, we asked, we're not just taking people's work. This is how we do things. So I have yet to litigate even kind of in motions. I've yet to have to put this issue into a pleading where we argue, that kind of ask, whether or not it's actually automated or not, is really not useful at all. And there are always two sides to things. Almost, I would argue it cuts both ways against the entity that is asking, because if your policy that you have implemented consists of an automated request and nothing more, number one, you need to ask, right? You can't claim ignorance. You have to contact the copyright holder, and the maximum your entity is willing to expend is setting up some kind of automated system. I'd say that cuts against the entity when push comes to shove. But it is I see it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with it has been my designers, and I think that's where a lot of the problem is unfortunately gonna occur if it has or has not already, where designers don't really know the difference, and they don't understand, or like my designer clients, for instance, don't understand the copyright laws. So all they see is, flashy lights. Oh, somebody wants to share my image, and they're like, oh, okay, not realizing, first of all, that they can't do that, and secondly, that I mean, I don't know if it holds up at all anyway, but secondly, that it's not going to mean anything. Because I've had a designer client text me and say, I just saw this, can I approve this? And I was like, no, you cannot. So I got lucky with the designer actually asking me. But that's where I think the trouble is going to start lying, where these websites see a designer who has a proper license to use these images from me, posting them, saying, oh, can we share this image on our site? They say, sure, because they don't know the difference. And then it comes back to me and they say, well, we had permission from
Right.
the Instagram account it was on.
This is, I mean, Brian, this is always the issue. Some version of this. Now, the entities that are asking for permission, this is they figured out a streamlined way of almost accomplishing what they want, but the dynamic is the same. It's always the same, and I see it almost all the time in images that are either interiors or some kind of architectural work, because so many people are involved in the process. So it's just statistically, it's just much more common in real estate photography and architectural photography, is that there are lots of different people involved in the production of the images. And once the images are properly licensed by the photographer to, as you described, either their designer, their original client, then things break down. I mean, it happens all the time where unless a photographer is very diligent and very good about educating his or her clients about what they can and can't do, even the best of us get ourselves in this position where they are not aware of what's going on. Their clients are the designers who may not have a license, but have been given permission by the photographer to use the work, and maybe even credit the photographer. Don't know the boundaries and don't know the rules of what they can and can't do with the permission that they've received from the photographer. And so that's where things break down. In the end, infringement is strict liability. If you, as a copier, do not have proper license or permission from the person with authority to grant that license or permission, you are infringing. Now, there might be one or two or three other parties involved in the liability, but that doesn't remove the infringer from any kind of liability. We probably, all of us have had the same conversation privately, but most entities in the real estate business I'd go even further. Anyone in the business of using visual material, they know what they have to do. They know what the standards are. They know that they cannot ask a person or an entity that is clearly not the copyright holder. They cannot just go to a third party that is using the image alone, but they do it anyway. I mean, that is the story of my practice. So
they're kind of banking on that the photographer has not registered the images, and it's going to be easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, and that kind of a thing. Am I correct, David?
Yeah, always.
In their point of view.
Yeah, and we're all, we all do the same thing to some extent. We try to find, I'm speaking very generally, we try to find the path of least resistance to kind of get what we want. And the infringers are no different. They, if there is a way to possibly get what they want without doing the due diligence, they're more times than not, they're going to take that, and they'll take their lumps if it comes back and bites them. But I don't know what the percentages are, but I'd be willing to guess the overwhelming number of infringers hear nothing from the.
They don't give a shit.
Yeah,
they know the game. It's all laid out, and they're doing it. Okay, yeah.
Well, that's the thing when it's automated. I feel like they just send it out to so many places, and I think about how many photographers there are in the world or the country, because we're talking about U.S. laws. Think about how many photographers there are in the country. I would say a high percentage of them don't really understand copyright law and what they're allowed or not allowed to do, and what their rights are with their work. So having this automated, it's almost like a numbers game, like anything else. If you send it out to 50 people, chances are there's going to be 20 people that respond. Sure. You want to share my work? Awesome. People still have that philosophy where like exposure is going to get me more work. And they're like, sure, put this out on your Instagram account with 50,000 followers. I'd love it. And unfortunately, I guess if it's a photographer that's saying that, I mean, they're not technically infringing if the photographer is saying, sure, here's my hashtag that they put out, you can use it.
Right. Oh yeah, though that is not infringement. I mean, if the photographer grants any kind of permission, then I mean, and not only that, a photographer who does that is really hurting themselves, because if and when the time comes, they get in front of some kind of finder of fact that is going to make some kind of decision about what that photographer's license value may be. They have a history of giving their work away, and so you never want to be in the position. Now, there's nuance to that. It's not one example of being asked to provide a license and agreeing does not kill the opportunity to assert that you charge money and you receive money for your license. It just makes a person in my position the job much more difficult, because we have to explain the larger issue of how licensing work, how commercial photographers handle different requests, and the differences between the value, the mutual exchange, letting us, kind of a friend use it for their social media for free compared to, an enormous company. There's a completely different exchange there. And most photographers at some point or another have made that exchange where they don't take any license fee in exchange for something that they believe is equally as valuable. It's complicated, but this is a perfect example of lots of other similar fact patterns where it shouldn't be this way, but photographers need to be vigilant about who they're working for and whether or not those clients respect their intellectual property at a base level. But also, photographers need to dedicate a certain period of their effort to making sure that they're on the same page with their clients about what they can and cannot do with their images. And like you said, Brian, your designers, all these third parties that have had a hand in things, they aren't necessarily the original client, but they may or may not know when and if someone comes to them and asks, it's a photographer's job. It shouldn't be, but it effectively is, to make sure that everyone that's in their orbit knows that everything has to come back to the photographer. The photographer is the one that makes the decision, yes or no, about how his or her work is used if there is a request. And the sooner photographers get that out with their clients and the people that are working with, the less trouble that they're going to have.
Cool. And just to finish it off, because we're talking about social media, and I'm just going to ask you on something that Todd just asked, because it's on this vein before we switch topics. And I see this occasionally, and I think this is what you mean, Todd. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Where when you post, I don't do it, but I actually know 2 or 3 photographers personally that do. They add on the bottom of every post, I am the copyright holder of this image. To share or repost it or anything like that, you must contact me first. Is there a point to that, or are you just basically trying to scare people off? Does that help at all? Does that do anything?
I mean, in my opinion, it helps. I mean, it's certainly better than not doing it. I don't think it really has a legal effect. It's a step short of putting an actual copyright symbol on something. I mean, the requirement of putting a copyright symbol or your name or some kind hasn't been a requirement since the 70s. But if you, as a photographer, if you are serious about enforcing your copyright, it's good practice, because it shifts the balance a little bit from, well, we just didn't know, from the copier's point of view, to you as a photographer, you always want to be, lots of things are out of your control, but you always want to put yourself in the best possible position for the things that you are in control of. For example, putting a copyright notice on your website, maybe putting a little copyright notice or a little watermark in on your images. There's a time and a place for a lot of that, or a little bit of that, but a hashtag that alerts would-be copiers that you are the copyright holder is, in my opinion, the benefits far outweigh the drawbacks of doing something like that.
Yeah. I have another question brought up by Nima. Do we have a minute, Brian, to
sure, we
bring
can
up the
change
question?
topics. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same topic. We're also going to discuss registering your images, which I am guilty of not registering my images yet again for another year. And I kick myself every year. I'm so sorry, Kerry, but it is just something that it's not in the forefront of my work day and my schedule, but I should do it. So Neva wants to know, I know the importance of registering your images. I prepare some of my images for registration as part of my workflow every day. As a high volume or a semi-high volume real estate shooter, does it really make sense to register all the 40,000 images a year, or just what do you think is worth registering? And I might throw this into Kerry's, since Kerry, you've been talking too much, so I don't know if we want to have you talk again, but what do you say about that, Kerry? Because you're the master at that.
Nima, it's a total waste of time to pick and choose which images you're going to register. You're going to save so much time and everything else. Just go ahead and register every image you deliver to a client. You can register up to 750 photos per registration for $55. That's less than 8 cents per image. I mean, is that 8 cents worth trying to decide whether or not you want to register a particular image? Just go ahead and register it. And to be honest with you, I've dealt with a lot of infringements in the last few years, and not a single image that has been infringed of mine has been from my portfolio. So don't think it's your best images. Don't think it's your images for your, that you shot for an architect or interior designer or builder or whatever. Register everything you deliver is my recommendation.
I would certainly agree with Kerry. There's a huge difference between, and Kerry's got it spot on, which is there's a difference legally. There's a difference kind of allocating time. There's a huge difference between the images that you deliver to a client and the images you don't. So there's little to no value in registering every single image that you capture as a photographer, because the odds of those images being disseminated in some way and being picked up and copied by others is next to zero. The only way that images that have been captured by you but not delivered outside your computer or your workflow, there's just no way that's going to happen. So I suppose there is a possibility, but it is so low that it is not worth registering those images. The images that leave your workspace and your personal space on your computer or your hard drive to the outside world, those are the images that are going to be copied, and those are the images that the moment they leave your control are published. So published images are the ones that you need to worry about. And on the subject of registration, very generally speaking, registering your image is the single most important thing that a commercial photographer can do. There is not a close second. Registering your images puts you in the position, if you are serious about enforcing your copyright, puts you in a dramatically different position than not. I'm not sure what Kerry's system is, but my advice to my clients is, if you have a system of organizing and registering your images every 3 months or more frequently, every single one of your images that you register is going to be timely registered. You have to think about nothing else. If you regularly batch your images every 3 months and register, all of your images will be timely registered, and you will have an enormous advantage when either an attorney or yourself negotiates with an opposing party that it's infringed on your work. You have the power of eligibility for statutory damages and your costs, which is a remarkably powerful tool to have.
I can say that's true for sure, David, because every time I call you with an infringement, the first thing you ask me was it timely registered before anything else? So
yes, I do.
Yeah, so it definitely holds true. And just to, you were saying 30 days, which is my workflow. That's because there's a 90-day grace period. Is that how it works?
Yeah, there are two ways that a copyright holder can timely register his or her images. The first and easiest way is 3 months from original publication. So regardless of when the infringement takes place, it can take place a day after you capture the image. As long as you register the image within 3 months of original publication, it is deemed to be timely registered. Even if you don't register your images in that 90-day window from original publication, if the effective registration date it precedes the date of infringement, it's also timely registered. So the effective, I say effective date, not the date of the decision. So the effective date of registration is the date that you apply for registration. The Copyright Office has done a remarkably good job, relatively speaking, catching up to registration applications. So a couple of years ago, there could be a pretty significant lag time. Now it's quite, relatively speaking, again, they do quite a good job. So I've had clients that register work that they get back an approval within a couple of weeks, so the effective date goes back to the original application date. So if you, for instance, if you register your work on January 1st, 2023, you don't hear from the Copyright Office until February 1st, 2023. The effective date of registration is January 1st, 2023. So that date serves as a date that could possibly precede the date of infringement or is within 90 days of original publication.
Yeah, I'm getting my certificates back in 4 to 6 weeks right now. And it used to be, I've had a couple that took almost a year and a half before I got the certificate. So yeah, in the past year and a half, they've been doing a great job of getting the certificates out. And Nima, going back to your question, you mentioned 40,000 images a year potentially to register. You know, that's like 54 registrations, so that'd cost you just under $3,000. Just one infringement alone, you could easily recoup that investment.
Absolutely.
So the photography is just a front for the recouping your money from poachers.
I
look
at it as recouping lost licensing fees.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I'm not sure if Kerry and I have ever discussed the subject matter, but it comes up literally every day in my practice where I'm having a similar conversation with a client that expresses some degree of caution about pursuing their infringement matters, and my response is exactly what Kerry just stated, which is in the large picture, since the digital revolution, artists and specifically photographers have been the overwhelming losers in the digital revolution. I still count myself as a photographer. We recover a fraction of the license fees that are due us for the use of our work. So, pursuing and enforcing your copyright is whether or not others choose to look at it in the correct way, is an attempt to recoup license fees from the use that users have already made of our work. There's nothing kind of in the bonus department about it. It's all about recovering what license fees should have been paid at the time of use. So most people have a version of this that they're comfortable with, but don't for one second, as a photographer and a producer of copyrightable original work, think that enforcing your copyright is something that you should not engage in. It is income that is yours.
Cool. I want to shift topics in a second to enforcing your copyright a little. But before we do that, as always, I want to take a quick break so we can have a quick word from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Are you looking to expand your real estate photography business? Stand out from the crowd by offering 3D tours, accurate room measurements, square footage calculations, and professionally drafted floor plans, all from the click of a button with the state-of-the-art iGuide camera system. Get your first 5 standard iGuides up to 3,000 square feet free by adding the code Shooting Spaces in the referral section at camera purchase. Visit goiguide.com to learn more. Yeah.
Brian made this for me for my workshop in Vegas, and I'm a big one on clarification of expectations, which actually brings up a really good point, guys. I think it's super important to head off these potential issues by having conversations with your clients, having conversations about what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And you got to find the time to do that when it's appropriate, especially with a new client. That's the best time to bring up copyright issues, because a lot of agents really don't know. They don't understand, and they don't take it the right way. And it can be done delicately. And one topic I'd like to bring up, but not right now because we get so many other things, but I just want to say I've always been impressed when we've discussed with copyright infringement, how reaching out to the infringer or the possible infringer until they're guilty, with kindness and trying to make it work in your benefit instead of getting pissed off is always a benefit, and can many times, and probably more than not, done properly, lead to potential money coming in and potential work in the future and upselling. If you really come across someone you can talk to and really just say, hey, man, this is the way it is, and I'd like to work with you. So I don't know if we need to go into a whole thing about that, but that's something that has always been important to me. Try and get your response you want with honey instead of vinegar, and don't jump on a potential bad person. Give them a chance and let them understand and see the way you see it. So,
Rich, I've done that, and I've collected licensing.
Oh, here it goes,
fees.
Kerry.
I've been able to collect licensing fees by doing that. Not a single time has it turned into an ongoing client.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about enforcing copyright. And this is something I told you earlier, David, I wanted to kind of bring up. And it's pretty new, and I don't really know much about it, although there was a case that I had with you, and you told me that this might be a good case for it. And that's the new, I don't know the exact name of it, that new committee that the U.S. Copyright Office sort of developed over the last year, I guess, to sort of handle these cases and help avoid going to federal trial, if at all possible, because that's a disaster in itself. As many of you know, I've said it before, I'm in the middle of a federal trial, and March is going to be 2 years and we're still going. So it is a pain in the ass. But that being said, what exactly is this new committee? What's the purpose of it? I know you have mixed reactions on it. Teach everybody what it is, because I don't really know.
The body is called the Copyright Claims Board. And they have in my opinion, a very good website. It's ccb.gov. The Copyright Claims Board is a extrajudicial body that was signed into law by President Trump about a year and a half ago. No, I take that back. Less than a year ago. That is specifically designed to handle smaller claims of copyright infringement. I think I can't speak for the legislator, but I believe the demand for the CCB was due mainly, based on the overwhelming or the increasing number of copyright infringement cases that were being brought in U.S. District Court. U.S. District Court, federal law, U.S. code is much more narrow and much more limited than state law. But still, there's limited time, there's limited jurisdictions, there are limited judges, and I think at some point a decision was made to create a body like this, in theory, to take the load off of simpler, more straightforward copyright infringement cases. In theory, it could work very well. It is a streamlined process. It is a cheaper process, and it is, in my opinion, kind of an easier process to understand. The same rules apply. The same U.S. code, the same Copyright Act applies, but the CCB, and I'm not even sure the correct term, the three individuals who are serving as, effectively judges, they know what they're doing. But the problem from my point of view, the problem with the CCB is that there is a giant loophole in the way that it's set up, which is, after a plaintiff goes through the trouble of filing a claim with the CCB, after we go to the trouble of passing kind of the first round of consideration by the CCB, after we have the equivalent of a complaint that is produced by the CCB and the equivalent of a summons, and after we serve the opposing party with the summons, the equivalent summons and the equivalent complaint, that opposing party can simply check one box and opt out of the process. That's the problem. And among other problems, or among other reasons, it just delays justice. It delays your case being heard, because if an opposing party can check a box and say, I'm out, then you are left in the same position where you were before you attempted to use the CCB to solve the problem. To make it even worse, the opposing party has, I believe, 60 or 90 days to make that decision. So after you've applied and after you've waited for the CCB to make an initial ruling on whether or not the information you put forth meets the minimum standard of a claim, and after you waited for them to produce documents that you then have to serve on the opposing party, after they're served, can wait a certain period of time to say, we're not interested. So I have yet to see a case that involves how an active case in the CCB affects the statute of limitations in a U.S. district court, but there's that problem too. So does the legal issue is, does a case that is actively before the Copyright Claims Board toll the statute of limitations if the plaintiff ends up going back to U.S. district court and filing the same claim in U.S. district court? So it's David, a little, yeah.
What I've read in the CCB handbook, it specifically states if you go ahead and submit a claim, that stops the time from ticking on the statute of limitations.
Good, and that I mean that's the way it should be,
right? But
it's still, even with that, it's still effectively delays. Not just, justice isn't exactly the right word, but it delays a resolution and a determination about the claim. So in addition to waiting for the Copyright Office to approve a copyright registration, in addition to you putting your claim before the CCB and waiting for the opposing party to respond, and potentially having to go through effectively the same process with you, just a little bit more complicated, it just delays things. And the more, as we all know, the more we put things off, the less likely we are to, kind of stick with it. And if you're talking about a series of 3 or 4 or 6 months before you even get your claim in front of someone, a body that is going to ultimately serve as the arbiter, it's different than, 6 months earlier when you're all fired up and you're ready to go and you have all the information at your fingertips. It disadvantages the plaintiff. That's all.
Sure. So what is that process that you spoke about? If you want to try something with the CCB, to start off with, and this is a question that Josh asked, what do you need to gather in order to, I guess, submit a complaint to them? Is it just screenshots and stuff like that? Or is this something an attorney has to prepare? How does this work?
So a photographer can represent him or herself in the CCB alone, which is also an enormous benefit. There are a handful of cases that I think the average photographer could handle on their own. I mean, most cases are a little bit nuanced, and that's another subject matter. But both the plaintiff or they don't call it the plaintiff, but both the individual filing the claim as well as the opposing party can both represent themselves without an attorney. That is a huge plus. So really, all the CCB is looking for in an initial claim is a prima facie case of infringement. And a prima facie case of infringement is, I am the copyright holder. This is my copyrighted work or copyrighted works. This is the opposing party. This is what the opposing party, this is how the opposing party used my work. And you are making the CCB the interface gives you an opportunity to explain why you believe this is infringement. For example, I did not extend, the opposing party did not ask, and I did not extend permission for them to use this work. It's really that simple. Examples of the original work, examples of the infringement, a brief description of the infringement, and a brief description of how you were harmed. That's it. And the CCB will take that information and decide whether or not it meets the minimum threshold for going forward. At that point, you're issued the equivalent of a complaint and a summons that you then to serve on the opposing party. Once the opposing party opts in, if they do, the CCB has jurisdiction, and they set up a time in the future and a deadline in the future where both parties have the opportunity to submit as much supporting information as they can. Documents, transcripts, any other information that can be uploaded to the CCB. The beauty of the CCB is there is no discovery process. So as a plaintiff, you are relieved of engaging in interrogatories and requests for documents and deposing the opposing party, and vice versa. So for most cases, this is the way it should be, because those things are very ineffective, because there's really nothing to discover unless the case has some new legal issue or some very complicated legal issue. Discovery is a waste of time. We all know what the image looks like. We all know who the copyright holder was. We all know how it was used. Either the opposing party has admitted they didn't get permission, or it's quite obvious. Those are usually the issues that are very clear in most infringement cases. And the CCB system, as it is now, eliminates the kind of the hammer that is the discovery process that can be abused mostly by the opposing party, but can be abused by both parties by wasting time and prolonging, what we all know is going to, the issues are going to boil down to.
Yeah, I mean, that was a situation in my case. I mean, it was literally, like I said, it's almost 2 years for my case, but the last year or maybe 15 months has literally just been discovery, depositions, just nonsense, waste of time. And the craziest part about it is like they're not saying we didn't infringe, because obviously, like you said, the evidence is there. They know they infringed. They know we have the party. It's more so why this is not going on is because they're saying our ask is too high. But yeah, it's just a complete waste of time going back and forth. And now we're up to the summary judgment phase of this, which should be fine because there's no question of guilt or innocence. It's more so what the judge can determine. But yes, it's just a waste of time. That's literally what it is.
So in theory, the Copyright Claims Board can be an incredibly valuable resource for both parties. I mean, mostly photographers and mostly copyright holders, because it's cheaper to initiate. It's $100 to initiate a case as opposed to $402 in the U.S. District Court. The U.S. District Court has potentially tens of thousands of dollars after the fact. But in a ideal situation, a photographer can file a claim with the CCB for $100, and absent discovery, absent all of the costs that go along with it, get a decision from the board in 4 or 5 months, and that ends the case. I mean, that is the potential of the CCB, but some things need to be worked out in order for it to start functioning that way.
Cool. So hopefully,
David,
I'm sorry.
what are your contingency fees for the CCB process?
My contingency fee is the same. I mean, I work with the same agreement, which is, a percentage of what we recover. However
Right.
we accomplish that. The CCB arguably is less of a process. It's less, it's less time, it's less effort. But with cases, litigated or not litigated, in the CCB and the U.S. District Court, there is certainly a difference between the kind of the resources and the time and effort required. But the reason I don't distinguish between cases that I resolve before litigation, whether it's U.S. District Court or CCB, before or as a result of, is because a lot of the work on my behalf comes before we even contact the opposing party. So, shaping the case, putting things together, crafting the argument, making a demand that is grounded in what we can support under the statute. So you are correct that there is a very large difference between what it takes to litigate a district court case versus a CCB, but so much work comes before any of those things that it's, it doesn't effectively make a huge difference on at least what I charge as a contingency rate.
Cool. I'm going to shift topics to one last thing I wanted to discuss. And, we have a bunch of people that have a couple of questions that we'll try to get to if we have time. But I think this is important for a lot of people. So let's see if we can do this quickly. And I guess this is a question maybe for you, Kerry, too. But David, you can chime in because you and I together on a case had this experience. And that is, how far is almost too far? And, I'll give you a story that David, because of his case we dealt with. And then I'd love to hear your opinion, Kerry. I had an infringer who was a contractor who infringed on an image that I shot for a real estate agent who had the contract with the development to sell about 30 townhouses. He had the contract. He ended up losing the contract, but the contractor who built them started using my images. And that contractor and that real estate agent worked together on many projects. And we reached out to that contractor. David, I think you reached out to him. And basically the contractor called my client, the real estate agent, and said, I don't know what this is. I don't want to know about this. You deal with this, and kind of put it on the real estate agent. And literally said to the real estate agent, my client, we do a lot of work together, but if you don't handle this for me, we're not going to do work in the future. At that point, my client called me, the real estate agent, and said, what is going on here? What's happening? Why am I in the middle of this? And unfortunately, I am in the middle of this. And he basically gave me two options. And he said, tell me what you want as a number and I'll pay it and we're never working together again. Or we can kind of just drop it and we'll pretend it never happened and we'll continue working together like we were. And for me, you know, I don't really do residential real estate, but this is a $10,000 to $12,000 a year client, which is significantly more than we were going to make off the ask. And unfortunately, David, as you remember, I said, I think we have to drop it. It's just not going well. So my question is, at what point, maybe for you, Kerry, at what point is it too far, and do you have to just cut your losses and be like, you know, I'm kind of screwed, but it is what it is?
It happens, Ryan. I've had instances similar, and I've just had to drop them, you know, because I didn't want to lose, you know, a good client. You know, it happens.
Mm.
And this, and you know, this is the fact pattern that you just described is a perfect example of the value of getting out in front of things as much as you possibly can. It's not always possible, but by getting out in front of things, just doing the, you know, similar to putting all of your license terms and all of the language that you want to make your client aware of in, you know, some kind of license agreement prior to the shoot and prior to the delivery of the work, in the same way that you can do it in a written form. You can take, you know, a couple minutes with your client more than once. You know, it never hurts to just reinforce the same thing, which is, you know, I want to remind you of the relationship that you and I have. I'm the copyright holder. I retain copyright. What we are exchanging is a license for you to use the images that you have contracted me to capture. Your license ends, well, wherever it ends, but for the most part, for example, it ends with the use that we've specified for your project for this duration of time. Anything after that, I trust you understand, and I trust we're in agreement that if you receive requests, which you inevitably will, you refer everything back to me, or, you know, you come to me and you know, kind of help broker some kind of third-party license. The more you can do a version of that, the better off you're going to be. Now, it's not going to solve all the problems, because people will do what they're going to do, and they're going to take shortcuts, and third parties that have nothing to do with your original shoot are going to access your images. But the more you can do of what I just described prior to completing the job and prior to delivery, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to have fewer problems. But even in the problems that you have, you are going to be solidly on the high ground when it comes to any kind of negotiated kind of compensation, because you are going to be the party that clearly outlined what the relationship was, and the other person is going to be the party that broke it.
Sure. No, for sure. And my client knew the situation, and he even said to me, he's like, I know that they're in the wrong, and I know that I was able to use these images, but, you know, they're handcuffing me. So I, unfortunately, in turn, have to handcuff you. And he even said to me, he's like, I hate to do this to you, because we have a 5-year plus relationship, but I got to save face with him. And my only way to do that is, unfortunately, put you in this situation. Because he's a businessman like I am, you know, and he put me in that situation. And he knew that this guy infringed, but he said, you know what, this guy is building 5 more developments, and I want to get those contracts. And that's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars for him. So he had to put me in that situation, and I got the raw end of it. And I guess that's just what it is. And it happens sometimes, unfortunately.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue to them, and they're probably balking at a few dollars to settle something, or it just seems to be disproportionate.
Sure. I think from his standpoint, it wasn't even that. I think it was that he had an attorney contact him, and he was like, I don't want any legal issues. You were my agent. You take care of this. Get it off my plate. You deal with it, type of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Versions of that scenario. I mean, I lost track years ago. the number of I mean, that is so common that I almost expect it now when I have a client that, shoots construction, shoots new construction, shoots interiors, architecture, where they're on average, there are more parties that have a piece of things. That is the norm rather than an exception. That what you just described.
Cool. All right. So we have a bunch of questions, and our initial thought was not to turn this into a Q&A session. But I feel like this might be good for some of our listeners. So maybe we'll throw some of the questions out there. Let's try not to get too in depth and make these answers fairly quick so we can go through them, because we're hitting about an hour now. So whether it's you, Kerry, or David, whoever's going to help answer them, let's try to make it quick, just so we can get some of this info out to people and not really get into the nitty gritty. So I'm going to start with a question from our friend Dan Francis, who asks, if you register an image and then later down the line you make a change to that image, whether it's retouching or whatever, do you have to re-register that? How does that work?
Kerry?
I've never have done that. And I don't think you have to, because you're not, I mean, if it's a significant change, and I can't even imagine what that would be, but if you just like tweak the white balance or the exposure or remove some small insignificant item, no, I don't think you would have to re-register it.
If you change it in any way, that's a new image, right? I mean, technically, I mean, not even aesthetically. It's like you've reintroduced an image, so it's a new image. It's like bringing an image in from Photoshop.
It's a new version, but it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely. If you make a derivative copy, then yeah, you should register it. But if you're only changing the exposure or the white balance or something like that, that's not a derivative copy.
And I'll jump in and just say, I have clients that register their raw files. So they don't do anything. They register the original digital files, and then I've had cases where we have to include the original, the copyrighted work in a complaint, and it's the same image. It looks different, like lots of adjustments have been made, but nothing has been altered. Nothing has been moved, and nothing has been, run through a filter or anything. So
it's still the same image.
Still the same image, still the same information that was recorded. So the answer, I think that the semi-short answer is no, unless there is a significant difference and it would qualify, as a distinct new work, then the answer is no. You would not have to register the new version.
And I'd like to jump in and bring up it's got to be a super quick one, because it's Rick Field says, do you wait until you have 750 images to register the images? I'm sure it's no, but Kerry, what would you say about that?
Well, I do.
Okay.
But go with what David said earlier. At least register every 3 months. But if you accumulate 750 images before 3 months is up, go ahead and register them. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. But it actually, if I don't have 750, in 3 months, I recommend doing it every 2 months. That way, there is no worry about you being within that 3 month period, that 3 month grace period that copyright law grants us. There's no question, because if you wait until the end of the third month, you may be 1 or 2 days for some of the images that you did not have them registered within the 3 months.
And occasionally applications get kicked back for some reason, whether or not you didn't check a box or I've kind of lost track of the reasons that I hear from my clients, but occasionally an application will get kicked back, and that the only thing that happens is it depends on the specific facts, but it could affect the effective date of registration. So.
Cool. I'm going to ask a question, and I'm actually interested in this, but it might be too techie for you, but that's from Cindy James. What are your thoughts on the future of photos and copyrights with the blockchain? And do you know enough about it to even go there, or no?
I mean, I will weigh in very, very briefly. In theory, the blockchain, as I understand it, which is a public permanent record of a cross-reference record of any changes made of any kind to an original image, whether or not it's ownership or the image is edited or in any way. That's my understanding. In theory, it can be a remarkably useful development in that. Well, let me take one step back. In addition to the basics of blockchain technology, as I understand them, an enormous potential benefit of the system is that original copyright holders and original authors can permanently benefit from the appreciation of the work and the value of the work. So, for example, if a photographer sells an NFT of a photograph, you can build into the sale and the blockchain the if the price increases over the years, and if it goes from one seller to it, or one buyer to another buyer, and the price goes up, you can build into the original sale a benefit to the original author. That is an incredibly powerful tool for the original author.
Correct. And I have sold NFTs on the blockchain, and I get a 10% royalty for any resales of that piece.
Absolutely, and that is an incredibly valuable possibility for for authors, photographers especially.
Cool. So, I mean, that's the type of thing we'll just have to wait it out and kind of see how it goes. Let's go with one or two more questions, and then we'll kind of call it a night. Nima asks again, is there anything to be done if there's an infringer outside of the US? It's happened to him twice. Pixie said they can't do anything to help. I know, David, I've sent you a couple people overseas and it didn't amount to anything really. So I don't know, you want to answer that?
Very, very briefly. It totally, in my opinion, it completely depends on what country. I mean, I hate to put it this way, culturally, different countries, in my experience, you can expect completely different things.
He said Russia specifically.
Well, no chance. But I will say most European countries, most entities that I've dealt with, I've drafted and sent demand letters to, they respond and we resolve cases. If they weren't cooperative, we would face a very, very difficult and time-consuming and expensive process of properly serving them. You can do it under the terms of the Bern Convention. There is a method to hold them accountable, but it's just very high maintenance and usually not worth the trouble. But there are plenty of instances outside the United States, mostly Western Europe, but not exclusively, where we get a negotiated settlement because I'm even hesitant to chalk it up to culture. They have responded in a positive way and accepted the fact that they owe my client some compensation for misuse.
I've had a $4,000 settlement from Italy before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it happens.
It happens.
Okay. Josh Mays asked, we were talking about the CCB. Is there a minimum threshold to move forward with the case? I'm assuming any infringement is an infringement, right?
Yep. No minimum for value. No minimum threshold. There is a ceiling though. There's a ceiling of 30,000, and there's actually kind of like not only is there a ceiling, there's kind of a first ceiling for like a even more abbreviated process, which is under $5,000. So not only a CCB claim, you can, I forget what they call it, but I think they call it I'm not even going to guess because I forget what it's called.
I think it's just smaller claim, isn't it?
It's some other term where you can not only opt to have your case heard by a CCB, but you could go into this special category where your damages are capped at $5,000.
Cool. I'm going to ask one final question before we sign off, and that's from Doug Brown. He asked it a little while ago, and he basically asked, how do you deal with, or what's the situation with designers or architects or anyone who thinks they have a stake in your photos because their work is technically in it? Because I mean, I don't know if designers' works can be copyrighted. Maybe they can be. I don't know what the rules are there. Or an architect's design, I'm assuming, can be copyrighted, or I guess copyrighted. So how does that work? I mean, I know your work is your work and you own it. Photography wise,
it like a lot of things, it depends. It happens. It happens sometimes, but not often in cases that at least I've handled. I just resolved a case not less than a week ago where a designer of wall coverings, the opposing counsel claimed that they could do whatever they wanted with the photograph that depicted their wall coverings, even if the wall coverings were a small percentage of the photograph. So it happens. I think it's a losing argument because, a photograph, just by its nature of including some other copyrighted work, is not automatically a derivative work of their original. As long as a photograph, there may be a slightly higher standard, but if it meets the minimum threshold of originality, meaning it's something other than a explicit depiction of the copyrighted work, which it's focused on, it's an original work. And while the copyright holder of, in this case, wall coverings, may very well have copyright in those designs, the photograph that includes the copyrighted design is that's not a defense to infringing on the photograph.
Cool. Makes sense. All right, cool. So we weren't planning on having a Q&A, but I think it was interesting, and hope some of our listeners enjoyed a little bit of that. And yeah, we kind of winged it as our first episode, but I think it went well. And I want to thank David and Kerry for joining us on tonight's episode, and all 20 people who I don't know if we have all 20 people here still, but 20 people did register to attend tonight, our first episode of this new format. And I hope it went well, and I hope all our listeners enjoyed it. And Rich and I want to hear some feedback. So please send us an email, send us a message, comment on this YouTube video, comment on the podcast page. Let us know what you think about this new format, and let us know any ideas for some future roundtables. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Feedback from you, and who you would like to, what topics or what people you would like to you get information and spend time with, like we just did. And again, I think, as Brian said, to get your feedback on how this new format is, if you feel it's different, if it's the same, or if it's whatever we've been doing for 5 years, we'd certainly like to know, because we're out here, we're doing what we do for you guys. So, and David, thank you so much. And Kerry, great to have professionals like you on our show. Appreciate it.
And before we say our final goodbyes, we're obviously, like always, going to say a quick final word from our last sponsor. We'll be right back. Let's face it, editing sucks. It sucks time, it sucks money, and it sucks resources away from your business and your family. That's why PhotoUp has changed the game. PhotoUp allows you to work one-on-one with an experienced editor that is 100% dedicated to you and your business. Photographers with a Photo Up dedicated editor say their edits are good or amazing 98.6% of the time. They're able to deliver images to their clients faster, and they get editing as low as 50 cents per image.
Really? As low as 50 cents an image?
You heard that right. Editing as low as 50 cents per image. Ready to find your dedicated editor? Sign up for a free Photo Up account at photoup.net and send trial images to 3 different dedicated editors. That's right. Try 3 different editors absolutely free.
3 for free. I like that.
So today, when you're all done shooting spaces, head over to photoup.net and hit the sign up button or click the Photo Up logo on the Shooting Spaces website.
And don't forget to tell them Rich and Brian sent you.
Again, David Deal, people can find you if they want to at daviddeal.com. Is that right?
That is correct.
Any questions about any cases or anything like that? I can personally attest to what you can do because you've helped me settle a bunch of cases before. And Kerry Bern, if anybody wants to check you out, you're prepiowa.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
What does that PREP stand for?
Professional real estate photography.
Easy enough. I didn't know what the first P was. I got the last 3 letters.
Yeah. And just for everybody who participated, if you're thinking about registering your images and you want some assistance or you're confused, feel free to reach out. I'm more than willing to help out any way I can.
Amazing. So thank you all for listening. I don't know if do we call this season 2? Because we're like 5 years in, but we've had like 168 consecutive episodes. Is this
version 2?
Season 2, episode 1, after 168, after 5 years. But thank you all for listening. Any final words to add, Rich?
No. I just think that we're so blessed to have everybody, and this is coming out in 2023. So get registering your, and I'm saying it to myself, get registering your images, Rich and Kerry. I promise you, by the end of the first quarter of 2023, I will show you a sign that I've registered my images, and we'll see where it leads us.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and hopefully, David, I'll be in touch with you so we can sue the shit out of all those people. And I learned a lot today, and again, everybody, thank you out there. Your feedback is really important, but I just want to say thank you all, and thanks to our sponsors. And just while everybody is enjoying their day and busy, just be sure to go out and shoot some spaces.